Hello, Mari. Welcome.
Hello, Armin. Am I saying it right? Armin?
Armin.
Armin.
Yeah, Armin. Yeah. In German, it's Armin, but that's a bit hard for Americans. Dear listeners, this is Mari Perron, first receiver of the Course of Love. This wonderful book, which, as you see, I haven't read completely yet. I just started it, but I'm loving it. And we're going to talk about this a little bit, and also the creation of the new. And for me, when I read this, I'm in a different space. It's really, really interesting, and I've never experienced it, not even with the Chronicles. It is something. And I won't even try to explain. So, Mari, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for being willing to talk about forgiveness, mainly. We'll also touch other things, but this is the first German online forgiveness conference, and that's what I would like to talk to you about. So my first question, how do you manage to forgive what there might be of hurt or attack thoughts or whatever?
Yeah. Well, I want to thank you for calling my attention to forgiveness, because it has not been something that's been big on my mind until really this year. This year, I've had some revelations about forgiveness. And part of that was because from the minute I began to receive A Course of Love, it was talking about being who you are, being who you really are. Mm-hmm. And that took my attention so strongly. It's like, this is what I've been waiting to hear my whole life. That the purpose in your being here is to be who you are. And so everything that sort of went along with that was my focus. And then as I proceeded with the Course, it was about, creation of the new and about dialogue. And so forgiveness really didn't get a lot of attention from me. And I really found that revelations come when you're ready for them. It's like at least for me, I've never found that it works to go in search of them. That revelations arise when we're ready. And so I must have been ready this year. And I've been having some lessons on forgiveness. And they're so varied, like one of them is almost about the Course of Love itself, because I feel like it's birth mother. I feel like, as this was a relationship, this was like my heart and soul. And as it grows, there's a sense of, well, I can't do everything. I can't control everything. I have to begin to let it go. And so those feelings have called up, but really in a funny way, because it's like, you know what? It's okay. It's okay that I feel this way. It's okay that I feel this love. It's okay that I feel this almost possessiveness that I feel, because this is a love relationship, and that's okay. And so a lot of what I'm finding when I confront issues of forgiveness is a call for acceptance. It's like, accept how you feel, accept how you feel. And that, that's an easy one. But another one, the big one this year, my mom died in August, and she was 90, almost 93. And for about 5 years, we'd known she was, every year could be her last. Mm-hmm. And in the last couple had really striven to help her to stay in her home, because that's what she wanted. She was really independent. And so that happened, and she made herself coffee and grits one morning. She was from Georgia, and she liked grits, and she made herself coffee and grits, and then In the afternoon, she went in the hospital and found out she had pneumonia. And 2 days later, she died, and she'd seen everybody in the family. It was a good death. And the day after that, you know, we had to start attending to the funeral and all those things. You can be kept really busy after someone died. But the following day, I went for the morning walk I always take. And I was not very far from home. And all these things people had been saying about my mom were running through my mind. And they were like, oh, your mom was so loving. Your mom was so kind. And this little girl in me just sort of raised up, and it was like, but she wasn't nice and kind to me. And I started just bawling there on the street, and just, you know, it was like this came out of nowhere. Mm-hmm. I had sought for closeness with my mom all my life. And, but anyway, so I'm standing there in the street corner, and I'm crying, and then I start to, you know, wipe my eyes with my sleeve, and I looked up, and there, I live sort of in a neighborhood verging a park, and in the yard nearest to the park, there was a deer standing there, and this deer stood and looked at me for minutes. I mean, literally for minutes, and I felt so certain that this was a sign that I could forgive now, and that my mom had heard me, and that the only response was this gentleness, you know, to the whole thing. And so then I got home, and I had to talk to the priest about about her funeral, and yet I was still like, I'm a Catholic, and one of the things my mom and I shared, you know, so when you really don't feel that close to someone, you'll try to do things that keep you close, and church going was one of them. So I had taken her to church for many years, and so I called the priest, and I said, I just realized I had not forgiven Mom, and it's like this wish that I could have done it before she died. That was what I really felt. I wish I could have done it before she died, and luckily he was a very wonderful priest, and he said, well, she's part of the community of saints now. And that's kind of the Catholic way of saying that, you know, once you've departed, you are part of the great spirit of, and there would be no, you know, no feelings about that. But then I kind of looked back through my life, and I remembered, because we're talking about forgiveness, one time when she tried to apologize to me for not being a good mother. And we were visiting her home in Georgia, and we're staying in a hotel room, and in that little, you know, confined space. And she said, I wasn't the best mother to you when you were growing up. And I couldn't admit it. I couldn't even say, oh, that's okay, Mom. It's all right. I couldn't admit to it. And then when I didn't, she went on and she said, well, I wasn't there when you needed me most. And I said, but you did so much for me. So I continued to remember things like that, where I was not able to join in the act of forgiveness. And I think a lot of it had to do with my single parent years, which made me feel like I asked a lot from people because I always needed help, you know. And so when I said to her, you know, you always did so much, that was the way I felt. And I've really seen how it's affected my life. This is one of the realizations I've been coming to this year, this feeling that of being able to move from a feeling of powerlessness to a feeling of power, and a feeling of not being so indebted, you know, and also not being so proud. I was so proud. You know, I stood on pride. I really actually didn't feel very good about myself, but it was like, you know, the father of my child abandoning me. Well, I wasn't going to let him know that I was hurt, you know, things like that. So all of those things have come up this year. And what I love particularly about A Course of Love is that it says that we are ego-free. It begins saying that in the first book. It says it for the first time, very short little line. It says, I won't be able to remember it. I have to forgive myself for that a lot too. This course really does something to your mind. It's like I can remember very few quotes from it. And, other people can remember them. I can't remember them. And I think part of it is we're to make it our own. Make it our own, bring it back out in our own words as it reflects our own life. But anyway, it says something like, you are no longer the I of the ego. I think that's the exact quote. You're no longer the I of the ego. And that follows right on this review of life that starts in chapter 19. And it was a very meaningful place in the Course to me. But what A Course of Love says is that we can let go of the ego, and then that we have let go of the ego, but we still have patterns that remain.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what I found early on when I would go out to speak on the Course was almost like the ego was a catch-22. If you said you were ego-free, there was nothing more egoic. You know what I mean? You couldn't say you were ego-free. And yet A Course of Love takes us there. Because it's like really the ego is just that part of you that thinks you're separate and alone. So once you realize that you are not, that you're connected to everything, that you're loved, that you're lovable, all of that sort of thing, it's like the ego is gone and you just have the patterns to deal with. So these things that I've been talking about that I don't usually think of in terms of forgiveness are these patterns that remain. And that come up as revelations in your life.
Can I interrupt a minute? They're so loud. I'm so distracted. I'll just have to tell them to be a little bit quieter.
Oh, sure.
Just
okay.
a second. We have a very nice apartment, but the walls inside. So
I know what you mean.
Yeah.
I've got the house to myself for an hour or so.
So, well, basically what you're saying, what I gather from what you're saying is that there is stuff in your life that can and will come up that might not have been looked at so far, and that you are able right now to really look at it closely and to be able to basically our negative feelings and the whole shebang of it didn't go well and I couldn't admit and da-da-da.
Yes. The acceptance of how you feel.
Yes, and that, I would say that's where it all already turns, right? Because if you accept what is right now, even if it's unpleasant, you're opening up something, I would say. You're opening it up to be looked at with love, and you're allowing love to come in to look at it. Is that a... Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. That chapter 19 that I was talking about, where we're asked to review our life, the next chapter is the chapter on the embrace. And the embrace is the most beautiful chapter of the whole thing. It's this, so I've really come to see it, and I actually had an experience of it as it was being received, but that we review our lives. We see this. In fact, I can read you a quote. Would you like a quote?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Is it chapter 19 in the first book?
Yes.
Oneness and duality?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And
It's interesting because I stopped reading shortly before it. So I guess I might have put some resistance there. Just kidding.
Well, it says all your previous attempts to go back have been like attempts to pay a debt that will never go away. This going back will leave you debt-free and thus free in truth. This going back is the journey without distance. You need not go in search of it, and in truth cannot, for the past does not abide in you. What you need rather do is strive for a place of stillness from which what needs review can arise, as if it were a reflection arising from a deep pool. Here, what is in need of healing will but briefly come to the surface, to leave the hidden depths where light could not reach it and healing could not come. What comes forth for healing needs but a nod of love from your heart, a passing glance of compassion, the merest moment of reflection before it will dissipate and show a new reflection.
Mm. That's wonderful. It shows exactly that the tension between, like, sticking and hanging around in the past or what it is, and the hurts and the patterns and the defenses and so on, like the really psychological side of it, which is relevant, which needs healing. And will show actually by itself. You don't need to dig and dig and dig. It will come, and it will be able to be, simply to be healed by looking at it.
A Course of Love talks a lot about the end of learning, and it's replaced by revelation. And what I've found is that revelations, I call them, come from both above and below. So the, above are those, glorious feelings of oneness or love or the embrace. And the below are just as magnificent. They just don't feel, they just don't feel as good. They're the ones that are about things we have still to let go. But the acceptance of them. And, one of the things is learning the difference between what we think we have to let go and what we do need to let go. Because, for one thing, I've always been a creative person and a writer and an introvert, and I needed a lot of solitude. My family never wanted to give me that. It always felt like it was taking something away from them, or like an affront that I'd rather spend time alone than with them. And so that's part of it too, is realizing that you have the right to be who you are. So those come up too. The ones that tell you, oh, I have a right to be who I am. I have a right to honor my space. And
And I have a right to receive forgiveness for what I supposedly did, or what I think I did. I can forgive myself in the process.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. That's the biggest forgiveness of all, forgiving ourselves. And, when I thought about forgiveness, when you first told me about it, I thought, well, yeah, because I want people to forgive me. It's like, I do. It's like when you think of forgiveness that way, that when you do something that hurts someone, you want them to forgive you. You don't want them to hold it against you, especially not for years and years, something that you might not even know you did, And so I can see the extreme importance of forgiveness that way too. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's funny though, because it's a process that you can't really, it's not a method, the way you describe it. It's not something that I decide now I do this, I do that, and then it's forgiven and blah, blah, blah. But it's more like organic, implicit thing that is happening basically in your mind, in your heart, in your beingness.
Yeah.
But it's not something, that as I know what forgiveness is. I do this, you do that, 3 step or 15 step, or it's more like that. It's not something passive. I mean, you have to be very alert and very attentive, and you have to be wholeheartedly with it. I'm not saying it's anything passive, but it's not something I would recall that you can manage.
No. No.
Or meet, or
Mm-hmm.
or checklists or whatever. Mm-hmm. And I like it because it's very gentle that way. It's gentle and it's guided, and I would say it's guided, but it's also that the guidance is within you. I mean, if you say about really accepting who I am, then part of the guidance is inside of you. It's like a part of us, guides us. And that's also the way that we get more and more of and to this bigger part. Are you hearing me? Are you hearing me well?
You're a little bit in and out, and I don't want that to affect your recording. I can kind of get the gist of it, but if you need to adjust or anything, I just want you to know that. I think it's just the way I'm hearing you.
I think the recording won't because it's recorded here. It's not going to.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Good.
Yeah.
Well, I had one exciting thing happen to me as a result of this request to talk with you about forgiveness, because since I can't remember things, I went back and I was looking a little bit at the course on what A Course of Love says on forgiveness, and just briefly turned to A Course in Miracles and read a little bit there. And I felt like I discovered something. And this is one of the true loves of my life, creativity and that sort of birth of a new idea. And I feel like I had a birth of a new idea. And I don't know, since it just happened yesterday, that I can express it really well, but if you're willing.
Please. Okay. That's the perfect timing, isn't it?
Yes, just perfect timing. And so I already told you, this idea that being who we are was the most important to me. Really what I felt strongest about in the Course. And then the idea of having to share who we are to be who we are. That's my favorite quote, and I can always remember it nice and short. You have to share who you are to be who you are. And before A Course of Love came, this was what opened my heart really to being able to receive it, I believe. Because I was able to, I felt like the first time in my life, share myself with a couple of other people. And this is written about in the Grace Trilogy. I don't know that I need to tell you too much about it, but it happened in my workplace with 2 women who became pregnant together. And one of them lost her baby daughter, Grace. And the vulnerability that existed in that office space where we were working was like palpable. It was just, everything needed to be gentle in that time. And out of that, we began to share in what I believe is what Jesus is talking about. We began to share with total vulnerability, to be able to share ourselves with complete openness. Like my friend was so afraid that she had done something that had caused her baby's death. You can't help it though. It's like you almost can't help it. So there are all these things. And then of course I had kind of always hidden my single parenthood, because I would just say, oh, I'm married for the second time, and this was a huge admission for me to tell these women in my workplace who I was a professional with that, I was a single mom. There was always a connotation with it for me. And so there was this, but it grew beyond that very quickly. And I heard from an angel who presented himself to me as peace before I began to receive A Course of Love. And what peace said to me was that my heart hurts so much. I always thought I was just this big old bleeding open heart. He said, no, your heart hurts so much because it's closed. You closed your heart and you have to open it now. And I want you to imagine it being held open by a brick, and I'll be the keeper of the brick. So this heart opening and this sharing that happened with these women were, I believe, the prelude to me being able to receive A Course of Love. And then, of course, I was asked to leave. I say, of course, because it's in the foreword, some of the story of this. But I was asked in a dream. I heard a dream that said, you can no longer sell your mind for money. Your mind now belongs to God. And I felt it was a prophetic dream, and eventually left this job that I shared with my friends. But I give you this background to say that I had already discovered that sharing was, this way of sharing was the most important, most essential thing that had ever happened to me. And it really did reveal to me not just my relationship, my closeness, my connection with these other women, but it revealed myself to me. So I was looking at, particularly in the Course, so I'm just going back, maybe 2 nights ago, before this interview, and looking at these quotes, and particularly those on sharing. So this is from chapter 31. Sharing is thus not about who you think you are, but about who you truly are, and yet it is the way to learn the difference while learning is still necessary. Sharing is the means through which the holy relationship you have with everything is revealed in truth. This truth lies within everything that exists, as it lies within you. As you learn that who you are is love, no deception is possible, and you can only be who you are in truth. And you will find when you read this chapter that in truth is italicized. And I think another reason that this stuck with me, the sharing being so essential, was because when I was receiving this chapter, I felt as if I was inside of the truth. And it's almost impossible to describe, but I can describe it sort of like an atmosphere, like humidity. Okay, so when you are outside and it's very humid, you can't see it, you can't touch it, you can't taste it, can't hear it, but you can feel it. It's an atmosphere. You're in that atmosphere, and it was like I was in this atmosphere of truth. That was one of my more intense experiences of the Course, my more intimate experiences, that feeling. So I've got these things on my mind, and then I go in A Course in Miracles. Now this is, what A Course in Miracles is like, and you could not possibly review forgiveness thoroughly in an evening. So I'm just sort of browsing through, and I see this quote. The atonement is a lesson in sharing, which is given you because you have forgotten how to do it. I mean, atonement is so huge in A Course in Miracles, and here it is. It's about sharing because you've forgotten how to share. You've forgotten how to share who you are. I mean, this was just like so amazing to me. And now I've lost my train of thought. But it was, it was like a revelation that what I'd always felt had even precedents in A Course in Miracles, that the essentialness of our sharing who we are and our being known for who we are. And so the question arose in my mind of, what if forgiveness is really all about this? If it's about our lack of ability or our lack of willingness to be vulnerable and share who we are, and to have others share who they are with us. I mean, I can recount to you, it was one of the things with my mom. It was so hard to be close to her because she'd gotten so practical, and she would talk about, the weather and the news and the doctor appointments, and hard to get to, anything that wasn't at that surface level. And it was really what changed for me with these women that I've already talked about, and the experience of sharing that started all of this. And so that idea occurred to me, and I thought maybe we could talk about that. What if that's what it's about?
I'm in the sphere now.
You're what?
I'm in the sphere now.
The sphere, yes.
In the atmosphere, or
yes.
Mari, this is, and I totally understand how hard it is to put it in words, because I can't either. But yes, it's what you quoted that, we don't, it doesn't matter exactly what we share, like, it's true or it might not be as true. Be some problems, some illusions, some stories. Okay. But if we do, we can see that together. We can feel how it feels to see it. Before that, we had no clue how it really feels. If we're letting it out, and if we're looking at the feelings that come along, it's a complete new story, a complete new situation.
Yes.
And I think in the connection, in the sharing, is this power.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You feel it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And yeah.
And you birth the new. So I'm really excited about this idea, because this is, when we bring it in, so it used to be enlightenment was this sort of idea of, rising up and being higher, or, forgetting about the self of form. And now A Course of Love is about the combining. It's about being who you are, both human and divine. So this is a change that is so welcome to so many people, and a little bit, off-putting to others, but to many people it's so welcome to be able to bring back the human heart, and to be able to bring back the ordinary, what we live day to day, and how we maneuver through these things as who we are, how we begin to share who we are. And just that whole, we're here to be creators. We are here to, we are the offspring of the Creator. We are here to create the new. We're here to create a new world. And, we have, when we get these sparks, so I was really excited by this spark of really validation in many ways of this idea I had about the importance of sharing, another validation of it. And really about vulnerability, because you can share a lot with people and never be vulnerable, and never have them be vulnerable with you. And I find that really hard now, to not go to that deep level of sharing. And So I actually have a couple of other things if you would like me to read some. There are two pieces of writing. One of them is going to be in the new edition of A Course of Love. It's called Dialogue Unveiled. And it was something I received in 2002. And there's a little paragraph from that I could read. And it was kind of forgotten about. It's so crazy, but the course has had this very long history. It came to me between 1998 and 2001, and then it was published first in 2001 just as one book, and then that went out of print. It never really gained any momentum, and so then I printed them as 3 single books: the course, the treatises, and the dialogues. And now they've been put together into a combined volume that you've shown here, and it's beginning to get attention and be translated and all of that. But in the course of all this time that went by, this piece called Dialogue Unveiled got left out of the new publication, and it has a wonderful little paragraph about vulnerability. So read it. Okay. To know the love that is what you are, as what you are, without the interference of a self of form, is to know the perfection of your particular form, of your particular vulnerabilities, of the conditions and environment of the life you were given, of the ground of your being, and to cease to wish that any of it was different. When you cease to wish that any of it was different, you quit restricting the miracle of creation that is who you are. It's just one little line from that.
Beautiful.
Yeah. But it also speaks about being moved and affected. It's like this whole, the brilliance of this course comes to me more and more as I see that its method works, So this whole idea, it begins with that you don't study it with your mind. You don't bring your intellect into it. You just let it sort of enter you. You let the spark of God in you, the Christ in you, do this for you. You're sort of passive. You're just allowing. You're receiving, as I did, just receiving it. And then it begins to have that ability to move you in a different way, in a heartfelt way. So.
And yet, you can still argue logically for vulnerability. I still like that, though I would like to see it. It's very simple. Being vulnerable, you're sharing your deepest and pettiest and maybe ugliest stuff and let it out. Mm-hmm. You stop to protect anything. As long as we think we have to protect something, it only can be private thought, right? Yeah. So it's always about specialness and, I have to protect that and blah, blah, blah. So I protect some kind of self-image, even if it may be petty or a victim or whatever. So kind of a paradox. If we show how vulnerable we really are as humans, we start learning that we do not need. And that's where the circle closes, and then we can show it, and it's okay, and others will start opening up, and then we go deep into that, and that's a major point, by the way. It's true. It's paramount, this opening up for others, with others. We have a lot of experience with that because our online courses are all about sharing. We always call it spiritual self-help group, because please tell me how shitty, your day was, your week was, and tell me how you were and how doubtful and everything. And having done that, I can so relate to it. And it's not about making the story true or real. It's about, I understand. I know that.
Yeah.
And in this connection, it's just somehow, I don't know, magically, mystically, it just dissipates. It just goes away. And that in itself is a miracle to me. And beautiful. So that's how forgiveness can work in a very concrete group or even only one-on-one relationship setting or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, as long as you're just being real. That's all it takes is being real.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I forgot. I had something.
You're forgiven.
But that's also sharing what happens as you transform. It's like, what is the difference when you're in this new time, when you're beyond the ego and you're transforming? I mean, I think really all around the world, people are talking about, something new is going on. And this, but like, you might think you were getting Alzheimer's if you didn't know there was this forgetting. Like for me, it's like I cannot do the kind of mental stuff I used to do, but I'm finding that almost everyone is the same. It's like everyone who's been working with the Course for a while, this comes over them. And then also like the falling away of effort. I've been so surprised, I've worked really hard all my life. It's like, I don't want to put effort into anything anymore. It's like, this is, and it's kind of okay as an idea, but when, maybe you don't meet a deadline or something, it's like, oh my God, I mean, because you're used to being kind of a powerhouse or whatever it is. All these things are part of the new, the gentler way of the new. And I think really that manifesting is going to change, that there's going to be a new way of manifesting that, I mean, of course it already exists. I think, what we hold in our hearts and minds sort of spreads out and engages across distance, it's a consciousness. It's like, I know heart math kind of proved that your heart has this electromagnetic field and you can change that field. And I think there's a lot going on that we don't necessarily recognize or even know the science of yet, but there's a lot going on, and we are manifesting in new ways.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. To me, you're already a saint.
Yeah.
Have to die.
You're so nice. Well, it's. Go ahead.
When we met for the tech check on Friday, there was this instant connection, and to me, and with my daughter, seeing you and everything, and it's beyond those words, and I couldn't. Please, listeners, viewers, I cannot explain what's going on. I can just ask you, do you feel it too? And do you go into that space or whatever of this connection of knowing that we are in fact one, and with you, Mari, it's so easy. It's so easy.
Thank you.
I want to thank you for that.
Yeah.
For your openness.
Well, it's a change that's going on. We used to it was like experts and teachers and everybody that were kind of telling us and teaching us. And this is more about just sharing, you know, and that's a huge difference. Going from, it helps us go from what's known to what we're coming to know, that we just share. There's not a teacher. There's not a learner.
I shared for those who didn't, I didn't record, and I shared with you something about my private life, and I hadn't even the slightest doubt that I could do this, because I just knew it proved me right, because it was so natural how we shared this, and I can feel that too in the interview.
Good.
You know, I'm so glad I did it, because that kind of like changed the whole frequency, or whatever you want to call it, of the interview. So connected with you, and well, I guess at some point we actually won't even have to talk about forgiveness anymore.
Exactly. I mean, really, both, yeah. Yeah, and both courses talk about that. It's really kind of like a fiction, forgiveness, you know, that when you get to a new place, it's really not necessary. But I will kind of add, and I don't really know what I want to say about this particularly, but that as a woman particularly, I think that we do have to realize our power. You know, there's so much going on in the world that we can't just let harmful things go on. That's not forgiveness. It's not justice. So, but until we embrace our own power, you know, our power to speak our truth, to be in voice, it's going to keep going on. So I do want to say, particularly for women, that our own acceptance of our power and our right to be who we are is really more crucial now than ever.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I absolutely agree.
Yeah. And for the sake of children too. Yeah.
Mm. I could go on and on and on with you. But
Yeah.
for the sake of, well, predictability and structure and whatever there is worldly, I have to come to an end. I just want to stress there is one part in German. This one has already been translated, as far as I know. But you guys, if you speak English, and it's not really like the hardest English, it's okay to understand. Get a copy. It's beautiful. You will be like from one cover to the other. You will hear when you end here. You won't be the same person in a good way. So, A Course of Love is beautiful, and I thank you for receiving it, Mari, bringing it to us, and I thank you for the patience you've been having. I've read some ugly stuff about you and this course, like critiques, and even by people that I know, and I'm saying, hey guys, you didn't get it. I don't know why I'm bringing this up. It's probably, I don't know, maybe a forgiveness lesson for me, because it's so easy to criticize, and what I just learned is that if you criticize, it's quite likely that you do not yet understand. And maybe that helps us forgive those perceived attacks too. Well, I don't even know why I'm bringing this up.
You know,
I really want to thank you, Mari, so much for this precious thing. this wonderful book. Thank you.
it is a course for our hearts. You'll get, you know, there's a devotion that comes with it, and a real feeling place. And I think that's part of what allows me to connect with people who become interested in it, because it opens a space for love to fill, you know.
And it is a deepening. It really is a deepening into going into ever more what we really are, and gentleness, and all this. Yes. So
who we are is love.
Yeah.
Who we are is love. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you very much,
Mari. Thank you. I hope to hear you again, and I'll keep you updated with everything around the conference.
Okay.
So.
All right. Maybe I'll share with you as I delve more into my big realization, my original thought.
Please do.
The need of sharing, yes.
Yes. Who knows what comes out of that? Yeah.
That's for sure. Okay. Much love to you and your family.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.